Cloudflare has added its name to the growing list of companies cracking down on hate groups. The web security company decided to end its business with the Daily Stormer, a known neo-Nazi website, after both GoDaddy and Google severed ties. It was an unexpected move, as Cloudflare has prided itself on its unwavering commitment to free speech, even as it's been criticized for providing services to alleged terror groups. Joining us now to discuss, Cloudflare co-founder and CEO Matthew Prince. You have said in the past, a website is speech, it is not a bomb.
Yeah.
What's different this time?
Well, I think that the Daily Stormer was a really unique incident, and to us, it was the exception that proved that we really needed to rethink a lot of the rules, not just with Cloudflare, but with the tech industry in general. In this case, the Daily Stormer really came on our watch list, our attention list, and really got put on probation a few months ago when we started to get reports that they were actually harassing people that were submitting abuse reports through our platform. And then earlier this week, they were bragging on their bulletin boards that the people of Cloudflare, the senior management of Cloudflare, were actually supporters of theirs. In reality, we think that the content that was on the site is abhorrent and vile. And that was really the final straw for us. But I think there's a really important piece here where we need to think about who it is as a technology company or the society in general that can regulate what content is online. I sit in a very privileged position running a company that sees about 10% of all internet requests, and I could make a decision that they shouldn't be online anymore. And I'm not sure that I'm the right person to be making that decision.
Now, to be clear, I think we should take a moment to talk about what Cloudflare does, because just because you pulled the plug doesn't take the site down, but it makes it more vulnerable to attack, right?
That's right. And so Cloudflare provides a number of services. We make sites faster, we help them stay online, we stop big cyber attacks launched against them, and again, see a huge portion of the internet. Most of our big customers are big Fortune 500 companies and otherwise, but we have small customers like the Daily Stormer that get attacked all the time. The reality of the internet today is that it's become such a dangerous place that if you don't have a major network like Cloudflare sitting in front of your infrastructure and you do anything which is controversial online, chances are that hackers are going to be able to knock you off.
Now, the reality of the internet is also that the Daily Stormer isn't the only Nazi website online. There are other hate groups online, and are those groups still up and running thanks to Cloudflare's services in part?
So we still believe that the right policy is to be a content-neutral network.
So this is not a precedent, what has happened with the Daily Stormer. This is a one-time thing.
That's correct. I think that this is, we hope, a way for us to say, let's stop and think about what's the right place for internet content to be regulated. You think about a company like Google. So Google terminated the Daily Stormer from using their registrar service, but they didn't kick them off their ISP. They didn't push an update to Chrome that didn't let you access it. They didn't stop answering their DNS queries across their DNS service, and they didn't pull the search results from that site. What that tells me is not that Google made a mistake in that, but that where in the internet stack something is being restricted or controlled matters. And so the rules for someone like Facebook or Twitter or YouTube are inherently going to be different than a company that runs a network like Cloudflare or Level 3. And I think we need to have that conversation about where is the right place for content to be regulated and who's going to make those decisions and how are they going to make those decisions.
Cloudflare has been called terrorists' little helper, a company that helps serve up hate on the web. Even if the rules are different for you than it is for these content providers, how do you respond to those accusations?
Well, the nature of being neutral is that there's going to be someone who you upset all the time. We have a project called Project Galileo.
But terrorism is different than,
Sure.
upsetting someone else for
Yeah.
a variety of other reasons.
And so
right?
when we hear that there's an allegation that there's something that's terrorist content, illegal content, or otherwise, we turn to the experts in terrorism and illegal content, which is law enforcement, legislators, regulators, and we say, here is this content, what would you like us to do? That to me feels like the principle of due process, that they are actually politically enshrined organizations who can make these decisions, as opposed to these decisions being made based on what the political whims of me or Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos are.
So are you saying you think the internet and these internet companies should be regulated like utilities?
I I don't think that that's the answer necessarily, but what I do think is that we need to have a conversation between all of the different stakeholders, and that means the technology companies, that means regulators, that means content creators, that means content consumers, that means civil society organizations, because at this point, it's the Wild West where people are making these decisions and those decisions aren't actually transparent. This has been framed a lot as a freedom of speech issue, and I'm the son of a journalist. I think freedom of speech is absolutely critical, but I think it's important to acknowledge that it's a uniquely American concept and uniquely American idea. On the other hand, due process is something that spans the globe and people really, really, really believe in. And part of due process requires that there is transparency, that there's accountability, that you can understand what's going on. And I don't think that that's necessarily what's going on with technology companies right now.
You've warned this is dangerous territory, this is a slippery slope. What is the worst case scenario?
Well, again, I think the worst case scenario is that you have a cabal of 5 to 10 tech executives who basically are choosing what content can and cannot be on the internet based on either what their own political and personal agendas are, or even in worst case, what their economic incentives and agendas are. That, again, I think is something that even as someone who sits in that privileged position, I'm worried about as an internet consumer. And I think it's important, again, that there's an understanding and accountability for when technology companies are making these decisions.
Look, these people, Nazis, would find each other if the internet didn't exist,
That's
right? But, you know, some people have argued that technology has given these groups oxygen, has allowed them to find each other more easily, has allowed them to grow. You know, given that these tech companies are now so powerful, including your company, which handles 10% of all internet requests, do you think that by taking a moral stand, even if it is a stand that these companies haven't taken before, they can actually make a dent in the fight on terror? Like, can tech companies make a difference with their policies? And if so, does it make that moral choice worth it?
So I am skeptical that censoring content makes content go away. On the other hand, I do think that taking content and saying this is something that we support and we believe in and we'll help promote that is really important. So what we're—
But isn't that like the opposite? Like sort of, it's a double-edged sword, right? Promoting things you like versus, you know, condemning things you hate.
Again, I think that people learn to hate, and so if we can teach them how that isn't a productive and part of a modern civil society, then that makes a ton of sense. So what we do at Cloudflare is we actually work with over 100 civil society organizations to identify either politically or artistically important groups that might be under attack, and they may not be under attack from hackers, but they could be from governments, for example, LGBT groups in the Middle East, human rights workers in China, where they might be trying to be silenced. And we say we'll lend our services in order to make sure that they stay online. I think that that's the role that technology companies can really play, is in saying, here is a way, here's an alternative way of looking at the world, which again is more progressive and aligns with the moral values of those companies.
Are you still, in this moment, uncomfortable with the decision that you made about the Daily Stormer?
Absolutely. I think, again, you know, I woke up one morning and got sick of these jerks using our platform, and I flipped a switch and they were no longer on the internet. And I'm not sure that that's a power that any individual, especially any individual that isn't politically, sort of has a political legitimacy to them, that any individual should be making.